Welcome to the Homeschool with Moxie podcast, where our goal is to inspire and encourage you with actionable strategies that take you from overwhelmed to confident in your homeschool adventure. I'm your host, Abby Banks, and this is episode 299. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 299 of the Homeschool with Moxie podcast. Of course, the show notes are at 4onemore.com/299. Today, we're chatting with sisters Stefanie Hohl and Meghan Voss about building connection through parent-child book clubs. This is an awesome topic. We've never covered it before, but I think it's perfect for homeschool parents. And so I'm super excited to talk to them and to learn about creating a book club with your kids to foster that connection and a bunch of other benefits that we're going to talk about. And Stefanie and Meghan have a book out about this topic, which we will link to and we'll talk about in this episode. So we will discuss what it means to host a book club, best tips, how to create that love of reading, even for that kid who's a reluctant reader and says, I don't like to read, or I don't like this book. They give us some really great actionable strategies for working through some of those challenges. So I know you're going to love this episode. And did I mention Stefanie and Meghan are sisters? So that's even more fun, I think. So Stefanie has been on the podcast before. We'll link to that, which episode she was on. But she's the creator of ABC See Hear Do, which is a learn to read program for kids that teaches reading through movement. So we've talked to her before all about that, and she's an author and she's written many other books. She has a master's in education. She has also a master's of fine arts in writing. She has 5 kids. She lives in Pittsburgh with her husband and her family. And then her sister Meghan Voss is a writer and a hiker and an artist. She lives with her husband and 3 kids in Montana. She's also a former English teacher. So this is a really great sister combination with their backgrounds in education and as parents. So the book that they are just launching into the world that they wanted to share with us is called the Mother-Daughter Book Club Guide. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and just the best tips for putting into practice hosting a book club with your kids, not just for your kids, but doing it with them. So I know you're going to love this episode. There's lots of actionable strategies, and that's what I love around here. So enjoy this conversation I had with Stefanie Hohl and Meghan Voss, and check out the show notes to get all the links. Well, this is a lot of fun to have 2 sisters sharing on the show today. So welcome, Stefanie, who's been here before, and Meghan. So maybe take just a minute or two and introduce yourselves to my audience.
Yeah, so my name's Stefanie Hohl. I was on the show before talking about how to make reading easier for kids using movement. And now my sister and I have worked together on a mother-daughter book club guide because we want to continue making reading fun for kids. So we're all about making reading fun and accessible. I have 5 kids and I'm in the Pittsburgh area.
And I'm Meghan. I'm Steph's sister. I'll just call myself that. I'm Steph's sister. That should be enough, right? But no, I'm also I'm an educator. My education is in secondary education. I taught English in middle schools and high schools for a long time. I'm also a writer, freelance writer and editor, and I currently work for a nonprofit as an education manager. And I talk about mental wellness in schools. And so I love working with kids. I love storytelling. When Steph approached me about doing a mother-daughter book club guide, we'd worked together on lots of different projects in different ways. But when she approached me about this particular project, it was really a no-brainer for me to jump in on that because she's the party girl and I'm the writing questions person. So we both kind of could use both of our strengths.
That's so fun. I love this. So we're talking today about building connection through parent-child book clubs. And I said, when Stefanie mentioned this topic, I said, I've never covered this, but this is a really good one. Homeschoolers love a good book club. So this is a great topic, but like the parent-child one, like that aspect of it is unique, I think, too. So talk to us first. Either one of you, take this, or both of you talk about it. But why is this even important? Why should homeschool moms that are listening consider starting a book club with their child?
I mean, I'll talk about it from a theoretical standpoint, and then I'll let Steph talk about it from a from a practical standpoint. I mean, theoretically speaking, I think, homeschoolers are all about, well, I think all of us as parents are all about connection. We want to connect with our kids. And the homeschool parents that I've met, I've homeschooled my kids for the COVID year. And the parents that I've met, I mean, there's so much, they really just want to be connected with their kids. And I think something like a book club allows us to not only just have the education of the book, and I'm all about that, right? We want to expand our minds, critical thinking skills, all of those things that literature does for us. But then on top of that, enjoying that with our children allows us to then have like this added layer of bonding and connection, because we're discussing the themes of the book, not just, how to read it. But we discuss it together, and it helps us, I think, to better understand each other and to build these memories of literature that aren't just, sitting down and reading together, but also having fun, making it really fun. So, that I think from a theoretical standpoint, that would be me. And I say theoretical because we're going to talk about this later, I'm sure, but we kind of wrote this book for moms like me who are stressed out by the idea of planning a book club. So I haven't done it myself, but I'm going to do it with my daughter. But Steph has a lot of practical experience from her own family.
Yeah, so for me, the reason I first started doing parent-child book clubs, what was it, 12 years ago with my daughter, was because she actually hated reading. And that was like hurt my soul because I wanted all my kids to love reading as much as I did. And I spent a lot of time reading to them. And I mean, reading to kids is great and a wonderful experience. But I wanted to make it more fun, more memorable, be able to do things with her. And she was very social. So like meeting with friends and then having fun snacks and doing a fun activity, it really brought the books to life. And it created these memories for us that were just like fun and different. And then I have four sons, and they all are very into sports. And I love watching them in sports, but I don't really like play, like my husband connects with them through playing sports with them, but I didn't have that. And so these book clubs really allowed me to connect in a different way with my sons, um, in a way that both of us enjoyed. I was able to share my love of books with them, and they thought it was really cool that, oh, we get to go do these fun activities and eat these cool snacks. And so it's just been a really wonderful way to connect with our kids in a different, unique way.
So I know that, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to piggyback on that a little bit because Steph is kind of on, her kids are older and my kids are a little bit younger. I have 3 children and my daughter is 9. So I'm on the front end of this where she's kind of on the back end. And I've already noticed, I mean, ever since the book came out, as soon as it came in the mail, my daughter is super excited about it. And it was just, I mean, life gets so busy and it's so easy to just be doing thing after thing after thing. And then this idea that when she found out that we were going to plan this together, it's like she just can't wait for that. And anytime I'm like, we're going to make a reel together, she's like, oh my gosh. And again, it's just what Steph said. It's this idea that we can kind of slow down a little bit out of the hectic element of our day and really focus on things that we both love to do together. And I love that opportunity that I probably would have been too intimidated to do myself if we hadn't made a guide.
Yeah. Yep. So the benefit I'm hearing, like the big one, is obviously this connection, which we're focusing on, but I'm sure there's so many other benefits. Can you guys talk to that? What other benefits are we going to see academically, socially? I'm sure there's a lot of them you can mention. What do you guys see there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one main benefit is helping kids learn to really love reading. I mean, some kids naturally love reading, but other kids they're just not into that. There's so many other things pulling at their attention. And so that, like, just developing this lifelong love of literacy. Um, And then adding the social aspect to reading, I mean, along with social skills, but you're kind of adding in like hearing other people's thoughts about the book. How did they react to it? What did they think about this topic? And so you're really expanding your mind and your thinking and being able to hear other people's opinions. Um, and I mean, along with also all the academic benefits of thinking deeply about a book and discussing questions about it, are all
Yeah.
great critical thinking skills.
Yeah, and when I created the question, when I was writing the questions, it was important to me to include those elements of I'm I don't know if I mean the official term I guess for it is social emotional learning, but it's that idea of yeah, being able to listen to each other and then reflect on what would I do in this social situation. So, you know, as a form I wouldn't say a former teacher, I'm still a teacher, I'll always be a teacher, but as an educator it's always important for me to look beyond just the story itself but how we apply that to our lives. So it is these critical thinking skills, literacy skills, and social skills that sometimes we don't take the time to reflect on because we're kind of living our life in this idea of we're just kind of reacting to what's happening to us, right? And I think this allows us to be intentional about, okay, what would I do in that situation? And not just reflect on it with yourself, but to hear other opinions and to actually have dialogue about that and see other perspectives. I think that's something that's really important in a society and just in families.
I love that you brought up too, like the reluctant reader, because I mean, we all, as much like we all want our kids to love reading, but you're right. Some kids, it's just more of a struggle, whether it's because they struggle with the decoding and, they have a learning issue related, or they're just never been engaged properly with how exciting it can be to get into reading. But like, is a book club good for them? Like, you really do see reluctant readers pulled right in?
Yes, absolutely. Also because it's a broader variety of types of books. And a lot of times kids think they don't like reading just because they haven't found the right books that they connect with. And you might say, oh, you might love nonfiction, but they're like, nah, I don't like that. But then when you read the book for book club and they might realize, oh, I really loved nonfiction and I want to read more of that. Or maybe they really love mystery or adventure and they just haven't really found that book that like sparks that gives them that spark to love reading.
Mhm.
Um, so I think one of the great benefits of book club is that it introduces kids to many, many different types of books, which just can open up a world to them because, often it's just finding the right type of book for a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I think
think
you're
I
right.
think
Yeah.
I think the discussion also allows kids. I think sometimes there's this pressure for kids that they have to love reading. My mom wants me to love reading. My dad wants me to love reading. Everyone's telling me to love reading, and I just hate it. And I think giving them the option to say, I didn't like this book.
Mm.
I tried it and I didn't like it, but I do love the snacks. And I do love, so it's giving them these positive memories with literacy while at the same time allowing them to have a voice about what they did and didn't like, and that it's okay to disagree with
Mhm.
someone else at the table. And I think that kind of helps to lift some of that pressure of, oh, I have to like this and I just don't, and oh gosh, now what do I do?
Well, and it teaches them that it's okay to not like every book you read.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
and that doesn't mean that you don't like reading,
Mhm.
you
right.
know?
Correct.
There's a
Because as
significant
adults, like how silly is that? Do we read everything we could read? Like we have our favorites, and that's okay. Well,
Right.
okay, this maybe is a side rabbit trail, but I'm so curious. I hear parents actually ask me this question, so I'm going to ask you guys because you're the experts on this. But like, do you make a kid finish a book? Like as adults, if I don't like a book, I don't finish it. Do we make kids finish books?
No. I mean, if it's a requirement for school, maybe that's different. But
Yeah.
in general, no. I think there's so many books in the world.
Hmm.
It's a waste of time. And if
Hmm.
they're hating it and they're struggling, unless there's like some specific reason, like you're studying it for literature and they have to take a test on it,
Right.
whatever. But
Yeah.
for the most part, no. Let them read what they love.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think I treat reading a lot of times the way that I treat, if they're doing sports or trying something new, I'll be like, you know what, we made a commitment. we're going to get into it X amount.
Mhm.
But if it still isn't working for you, you don't have to,
Mhm.
we don't have to do this again or whatever. And so with sports, maybe if I'm paying for it, they have to actually do one whole season. But with books, I think it's more having that conversation. And I will often talk to my kids. I mean, I remember when I was young, there was a book that I started, and emotionally I just couldn't handle it. And I remember I was sobbing and I just couldn't read it. And then my dad read it and was like, it's actually not a big deal. But I just could not handle it at that age. And so I put it aside. And then I think it was 2 or 3 years later, I picked it up again and it became one of my absolute favorite books. And I didn't even know why I was so upset.
Mm.
But, I'll talk to my kids about that and just be like, just because you don't like it now, you can try it in a couple of years. And if you still don't like it, that's totally fine. You don't ever have to finish it. But, things
Also,
change as we change.
one thing I started doing with my youngest son is like he finished a series he really loved, and he's like, I can't read any other books. Nothing will be as good as those. And I was like,
I love
and
him.
I went and I like pulled like I think like 6 books off the shelves, and I said, read the first chapter of each of these, and whichever one speaks to you, read that book. And he like read the first 3 and he's like, no, no, no. And then he found one that he was like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. So I think that's another way too, like let kids start a book and be like, just give it 10 pages. And if you don't like it, you don't have to read it and we'll find something else.
Mhm. Oh, I like that. That's a good strategy. Cool. So what tips do you guys have for starting a successful book club? What does that even mean? Like, I'm trying to picture like how many people are involved, how often do you meet? Like, so give me all the tips. What does this look like?
So
So
in
I,
general,
oh,
oh, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Steph.
Okay. I found that every month can often be overwhelming. I found like 6 to 8 weeks is usually a sweet spot with people's busy schedules. You can meet every month if everyone's gung ho.
Mhm.
Um,
In
but
my in my community, the one that we're going to start, I think there's a girl in our community who does like kid book clubs together. And so we were thinking, oh, maybe we'll do a mother-daughter, like a together one with the mothers and daughters every quarter. And for us, that felt best just because of our particular schedules where we are.
Mhm.
yeah, and for the number of people, I think that just depends. I mean, I would usually invite 6 to 8 moms, and then you'd usually get 4 to 6 that come each
Mhm.
month. So often it's better to have more on the lists for, when people can't come. But I mean, even if you can even use the book just with your family and your own kids, honestly.
Mhm.
Even if you just have one friend to do it with. I mean, I think the most we've had is maybe up to 10 to 12 kids. More than that, it starts feeling kind of unmanageable. Especially if they're rowdy. But I mean, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. But I really think about like six kids is like the sweet spot. So everyone can have a chance to give their thoughts. But there's enough to like make it a good discussion.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I like what Steph said about we call it a mother-daughter book club guide, but you can use it. Obviously, fathers and sons can use it. We can use it in your families. It doesn't have to be,
Mhm.
this super organized group thing, in that sense. But, if your family loves reading books together, yeah, make it like a Friday night book party and use some of our ideas and questions in your family. So it really is you can adjust it for your needs.
So if you're
And
meeting once a month or 6 to 8 weeks or whatever, are you reading the whole book on your own before you come? And then the whole meeting is just discussing the entire book?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I usually read the books with my kids as they've gotten older. Sometimes we read them individually. Sometimes we do the audiobook. It just depends on the situation. And one other tip I did want to throw in there for the meetings, I have found that they go better when the moms are engaged. Because sometimes there's meetings where like the host is running it and the moms are off in the corner chatting with themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, which is not the end of the world. but I have found it's better when the moms are actually engaged in the discussion. And obviously we want the kids to be the ones talking, but when a mom comes in with her perspective, I think that's really good for the kids too, to hear that. Not to overtake the conversation or anything, but to hear a very different perspective. Or sometimes, moms can bring up even other questions. So that is one tip I have when you do the book club, to try to have the other moms engaged.
So do you guys say like this is the book and hope that everyone likes it? Do you like poll everyone and like give them here's the 4 books we're thinking about using? Like how do you even choose the book? And I'm guessing like the age range of kids has to be similar-ish, like reading level. I don't know. How do you navigate all that with a group of kids?
So, like the age range, I mean, the guide we did is kind of like fourth through seventh or eighth grade. So like when I ran my book club with my sons, they were 2 years apart, and so we invited both of their friends, and that worked really well. I mean, if you have like a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old inviting their friends, that maybe they all get along, maybe they're two different levels maturity wise. I mean, I think you just have to know your kids and who their friends are. But I think you can mix ages, absolutely. And sometimes that actually gives a lot of different perspectives, which is nice.
And as for choosing the book, I think that really just depends on your group, the relationship you have with your group, and how you want to proceed. I mean, I know with my friends, I think they're all so busy and doing so many things. I think they'd almost rather you just give me a book and then we'll read it and we'll either like it or we don't. Just as a caveat, the questions that I included in the book, as much as possible, I tried to include the types of questions that even if you hadn't finished the book, even if you didn't read the book, you could still take part in the conversation. So I might include a quote and then give a little bit of context for it. But then often, most of the time, now there are some that are, you kind of have to know the book, but I always tried to include question options that everyone could take part in this question, whether or not you had an in-depth knowledge of the book or not.
And I always think there's always going to be people that come that haven't finished the book or they haven't read it. And I always say they're welcome, because you can still get things out of the discussions, like Meg is saying, like you can still participate even if you haven't read the book. Obviously, we want everyone to read the book, but life happens.
Yeah.
And as for choosing books, you can do that any number of ways. Like each person who's hosting can choose the book and say, this is the book we're reading. Or I've been in book clubs where everyone submits a few books and you vote on what you want and you have the whole year planned out. Or I've seen where you come to the book club and the next person that's going to host is like, I have these 3 options. Let's vote on which one. So I think anything works. You just kind of have to determine what your group wants to do.
We included 12 books. We included 12 books in the guide that we'd chosen, just to kind of give people quite a few options. I mean, obviously you could do one per month if you just wanted to go straight through the guide. But that being said, there might be some books that in this guide that if you have a group of 9 and 10-year-olds that you might think, you know what, that one feels like it's a little bit too advanced for our 9 and 10-year-olds. So we wanted to be able to give varied options that people could, adjust for their needs.
I'm glad you're bringing this up. I thought we should probably talk about your book because we're kind of dancing around it here, but do you have a copy you can hold up? Do you have a copy there?
Yep. I have one right here.
Show us what it looks like. Okay, cool. So is it available like right now already?
Yes.
Okay. So this is good because I was curious, like, is it a generic, here are generic questions you could ask about any book? No, you're giving actual 12 like ideas of use this book and you walk us through, tell us, tell us what we'll find in there. Give us an example of some of the books. And then like you're saying, it basically scripts it out for parents, I'm guessing. So they don't have to be scared if they've never done this before. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, it tells you exactly.
Steph, do you want to want me to talk about like the question part, and should we talk about the parts that we contributed to? So, for example, some of the books that we have in there are Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. That one is kind of like it's based on Chinese folklore, and it's fiction by Grace Lin. We have Princess Academy by Shannon Hale, which is that one's fantasy. We have one called Yummy, which is a graphic novel. It's nonfiction graphic novel. That one's really fun. And then we have classics like Anne of Green Gables was a really fun one to do information on. So for each book, we have a summary, just kind of like a book jacket summary, so that parents can read over it to see, is this even something that we want to read? We have some basic facts about it. And then we included 10 discussion questions for each one. And like I mentioned before, I really tried to make these discussion questions as specifically general as I could. So for like an Anne of Green Gables question, I might say something like, what does it mean to have a bosom friend? Do you have one? And then they can talk about, what that means. And then there's some questions that would be specific to the book. How does Anne change as she grows older? So that's one that you kind of need to read the book for. But there would be something like, Anne loved making up beautiful names for places. Think of a few places in your town. What new names might Anne give them? And so trying to open up that creativity, as well as that kind of social emotional learning, as well as options that are really book focused. We don't really expect everyone to use all 10 questions. So we tried to include a lot of different types of questions so that you could pick and choose really what works for you and your group and what you feel comfortable with. I also, as a former English teacher, I also had to include at least two questions that were based on actual quotes from the book, so that you could go to that quote. And if that's something from an intellectual standpoint, if your group is a little more academic and you want to, be having them look up quotes or something like that, I included that as well. So that's kind of the discussion element of the book, kind of the academic side of it. And then Steph always brings the fun. So then she'll tell you what she included.
I'm all about the fun. I'm all about the food, honestly.
I'm like, academics, let's get nerdy about books. And Steph's like,
and
it
I'm
has
like,
to be fun.
give me the treats. So then we have snack ideas, which, I went through each book and found the food that they eat in that book and like wrote ideas of how you could do that. So like talking about Anne of Green Gables again, it's like you could have the raspberry cordial, or you could have the pound cake, things that Anne ate to really relate to that book. And then we include activity ideas. We usually give like 5 different activity ideas. So, you can choose whichever one works for you. So like, again, Anne of Green Gables, like you can have the girls create their own chalk slates, or they can figure out how to send coded messages to each other like Anne and her friend did. So it's like doing activities based on the book that are really fun. And then we have like just a little fun facts section, just to, give a little more background about the book. Other books they'd love. And then we also offer picture book suggestions, which we thought was a fun idea to take the learning even further if you wanted to like read the picture book and be like, how does this compare and contrast to the book? What are some of the same themes here? What similarities are we seeing? And then
some of my favorite classes some of my favorite classes in college were like comparative lit classes, where you're reading about the same theme from different perspectives and in different ways. And so we tried to, that's what that picture book suggestions is to kind of pull that down to a kid's level. Like let's broaden this a little bit and see how it's been seen by other authors.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steph, keep going.
Oh, no, you're good. And then there's a planning guide where you can just write down, how you want to plan out your book club. And at the beginning of the book too, we include like all the information about how to start a book club, tips, all those things. So we try to make it as simple as possible for parents. They can just pick up the book, be ready to go. So you're not have to Googling, oh, what ideas should we do for this? It's just all right there.
We even have an index at the end where you can look it up you can look up books based on themes that are found in that book. So if you're like, we really want to do a book on friendship this month because that's important to us, or, I know Steph has talked about it, you need to pay attention to the time of year. Like we have, Bridge to Terabithia is one of the books in there. And so we just mentioned something like that might not work as well in, November, December, when you're in the middle of the holidays, and grief can be a really sensitive topic for people at that time of year, especially. But if that's something that, it's something that your group does want to tackle at another time of the year, you can look in the back and look up, grief, and you can find any books that deal with that topic or friendship or whatever.
And we tried to we included like a wide variety: fantasy, classics, nonfiction, graphic novels, novels in verse, contemporary, so that it's a wide range of books. So hopefully there's something in there for everybody.
I like that you did all the work because it sounds like a just easy, user-friendly, like, okay, do it for me. Tell me what I can,
Yes.
use, which is awesome. Homeschool moms want that kind of resource. So I think I think you guys hit a niche there. It's really great. Want to speak as we wrap up? We're going to wrap up here in the next few minutes, but like, do you guys want to speak to this last minute encouragement of the mom who's like on the edge? She's like, this sounds great, but I'm a little scared. I'm a little nervous. I'm sure, moms get a little nervous about inviting all the people over to the house and being in charge of something like this. So speak to that mom who thinks it's a great idea, but is on the edge. What last minute encouragement would you give her?
Okay, I am that mom. 100%. Like, we published this and Steph was like, Meg, you should probably host one of these because we're actually like, we just published a book together. And so I am that mom. And honestly, having this book just like it's like my comfort blanket because it depends on your situation, right? Like, so for me, I don't have a big house to host a bunch of people. So I called a friend of mine and I said, hey, I wanted to host this. Can we have it at your house? And she loves hosting. So she was like, yeah, sure. That's fine. Let me know what I need to do. So I think part of that encouragement is depending on who you're inviting, you might be able to leverage your friends' gifts that they might be like, yeah, I'm happy to do the snacks, or I'm happy to do that sort of thing if that comes easily to them, but it's hard for you. Another thing, depending on your daughter and what your daughter enjoys doing, my daughter loves parties, but it stresses me out because she will be like, we're going to have a party. And then she goes off on like 400 ideas. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, no, oh my gosh. And then I just want to crawl into a hole. And this really helps to kind of lock that down. Like, okay, I love all of your ideas. Let's choose one of these ideas. And then suddenly I feel like I can do this because, my daughter is part of the conversation. But I don't have to go off and like, create ice sculptures or whatever that she has this idea to do. But these are very practical. And we really tried to include ideas that are not super difficult to incorporate. And, some are more intense than others, but that's really whatever works for you. So that would be my encouragement is, I am you, if that is it. And this has really given me a lot of like peace of mind knowing, okay, I have a structure, I have, a framework and a structure, and I can do this. I actually can.
And also it doesn't have to be at your home. If it's nice out, like we've held tons of these at the park, which is great. Go sit around a picnic table. Then you don't have to clean your house and you don't have to clean up after. We've actually held them at our church. We've held them, I don't know, but some of them we've done like field trip type thing. So, I mean, if having people over to your house really stresses you out, you can find other places to have them. And also, it does not have to be anything extravagant. Like we did try to include very simple ideas of stuff you already maybe have in your house. Like, I mean, obviously there's going to be the moms that go all out. They put up the decorations, they make the themed cupcakes, whatever. You don't have to do that. It can be something super simple and it's still a fun, meaningful experience.
This has been an awesome topic. Let's just wrap up with tell us where we can find the book online, and then each of you, where can we find you online if we want to follow you?
So the book is on Amazon. It's also on my website, abccheredo.com. I am on all the social media at Stefanie Hohl, or at abccheredo.
And yeah, you can find me on social media at Meghan Voss Studio. And that's V as in Victor, OSS, and MEGHAN.
Very fun. Thank you, girls, for joining me today. This is a fun topic, and I'm so excited that you reached out and wanted to cover it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
so
This
much for
was
having
very
us.
fun.
I hope you loved this episode with Stefanie and Meghan. I sure did. It's a great topic and a great one for us who homeschool. And you know what? This book would be awesome to grab and use with your homeschool co-op. Or if you don't have a co-op, grab their book and just use their ideas to kind of start a book club of your own. I think it's awesome. Check out the show notes at 4onemore.com/299, and we will link to everything there. Thanks for joining us today. And in the meantime, happy homeschooling.